there always comes a moment, an unshakable, undeniable moment, when reality breaks through the narcissist's perfectly crafted mask. It's the moment when their confidence starts to crack, when their carefully built lies collapse under the weight of truth, and when the results of what they did to you finally begin to catch up with them. The illusion of control starts to crumble when the narcissist faces something they never believed possible, real consequences. For so long, they lived in the comfort of thinking they were untouchable, shielded from accountability, masters of every situation. They built their world like a fortress, one made entirely to protect their fragile ego, to keep the fantasy alive, that they were always right, always in charge, always superior. In their version of reality, people were not equals, but orbiting satellites, existing to admire them, serve them, and bend to their will. The thought that someone might one day walk away, not from weakness but from strength, was something they never truly considered. To accept that possibility would mean accepting that others hold power too, that others matter outside their usefulness. But narcissists are not built to recognize that. They are not built for humility. When their illusion begins to break, it rarely happens all at once. It begins in tiny, almost invisible ways. A missed call, a calm silence where once there was reaction, a boundary quietly drawn. Something that once triggered guilt or obedience in the other person now meets only indifference. The narcissist doesn't understand it right away, but something feels off. They sense a disturbance in their control. The tactics that once worked, the silent treatment, the guilt trips, the emotional highs and lows, no longer bring the same results. They push harder, test further, trying to reclaim the grip they once had, but it slips, and that loss of control stirs a deep unease they cannot name. That unease grows each day as the world they built begins to shift. For a narcissist, self-worth depends entirely on reflection, on how others respond to them. They see themselves through the eyes of their admirers. But when that reflection changes, when the admiration fades, the mirror begins to show something else. It starts revealing the truth, the manipulations, the deceit, the cruelty. And the person who once provided the validation, the one they underestimated and belittled, now stands unshaken, detached, unwilling to play the game anymore. That moment of clarity is terrifying for a narcissist, not because they suddenly feel remorse, but because the foundation of their control is falling apart. This unraveling doesn't happen in public. Narcissists are masters at hiding their cracks behind charm and performance. But behind closed doors, when no one is watching, they feel it deeply. The world they built on lies and manipulation starts to feel unstable. The person they once dismissed as weak now stands beyond their reach. And that loss isn't just frustrating, it's existential. Their sense of self depends on control, on being needed, admired, or feared. Without that, they begin to feel invisible. Their power relied on your participation, on your willingness to accept their version of reality. Without you, their narrative collapses. The control they thought they had begins to dissolve like sand slipping through their fingers. They start to wonder what went wrong. How could they lose power over someone they once dominated so easily? How could the person they thought they had broken become stronger than before? That kind of reflection is unbearable to them. It cuts to the core of their identity. They don't know how to process it, so they deny it. Out loud, they may still brag, still pretend nothing has changed, still tell stories about how they are fine without you. But inside, they're restless. The old tricks don't work. The emotional buttons they used to press are gone. The silence you leave behind becomes their new torment. In this stage, they start rewriting the past inside their head. They tell themselves you were the problem, that you were too emotional, too ungrateful, too difficult. They twist reality again, trying to soothe themselves, but even their own excuses start to sound hollow. The truth keeps echoing back. The loss of control is real. You're not angry anymore. You're indifferent. You're not begging for closure. You're calm. You're not broken. You're free. That quiet strength, that unbothered energy is something they can't handle, because control only exists when the other person still cares enough to fight, and you don't. The narcissist often surrounds themselves with enablers, people who feed their illusions, who agree with every story, who reassure them of their greatness. But when someone leaves with strength instead of fear, it plants a seed of doubt in their world. That doubt spreads, it breaks their echo chamber. Suddenly, the lies they tell themselves don't feel as convincing. They may try to regain control through charm, guilt, or sudden bursts of emotion. They might even pretend to change, but it never lasts because control only works when the other person still wants the connection. Once that care is gone, nothing they do matters. They start to feel the shift. You've moved on, you're living, you're glowing, you're healing, and they're stuck, watching from the outside, trying to make sense of a story they can no longer direct. Every day you don't respond, the cracks in their illusion widen. They scroll through old messages. They replay the moments where they still had your attention. They analyze every silence, looking for a weakness. But deep down, a small voice starts to whisper the truth. The control they had was never real. It was only borrowed, sustained by your empathy. Now that you've reclaimed your power, they are left standing in the emptiness they once tried to run from. For so long, narcissists believe the people in their lives are permanent. They see you as a fixture, something they can always return to when they need validation. You weren't a person to them. You were a resource, a mirror, a source of admiration. They assumed you would always be there, always forgiving, always trying to understand. But one day that pattern broke. You saw the truth, you stepped back. You realized your worth and you left, not in anger, but in peace. At first, they don't believe it. They tell themselves you're just trying to teach them a lesson. That you'll come back like before. They wait for the message, the apology, the confrontation, but none comes. There's only silence, the kind of silence that says everything, and that silence is powerful. It's the sound of freedom. When they finally realize it's real, panic begins to rise. They try small ways to reconnect. A casual message, a nostalgic post, a joke meant to open a door, but you don't answer. And that's when it hits them, not just as rejection, but as loss. Because this wasn't just the loss of another person. It was the loss of something they didn't even understand until it was gone. You weren't just someone in their life. You were their emotional anchor, the one who stayed when others didn't, the one who understood their chaos, the one who saw through their act and still tried to help. You were the rare person who saw beyond the mask, and they destroyed that. Now they're left with memories they can't escape. They scroll through your pictures, reread old conversations, replay moments when you showed kindness even after they hurt you. They remember how you forgave them when no one else would, how you stayed when others had already walked away, and now that light, that voice, that patience is gone. They try to replace it with new faces, old flings, shallow attention, but nothing works, because what they lost wasn't replaceable. It wasn't just attention, it was connection. You were the one who saw them even when they couldn't see themselves. You were the only one who gave love without a hidden agenda, and now they're left with silence that no performance can fill. The loneliness they used to outrun finally catches up. It doesn't come with drama. It arrives quietly like the weight of truth settling in. That's the end every narcissist meets alone, exposed, haunted by the echo of what they destroyed. Not because someone punished them, but because they built their life on lies, and lies always collapse. They tried to control everything, but in the end, they couldn't even control the one thing that mattered most: being seen, being loved, being real. The warmth they once took for granted has disappeared. The air around them feels colder now, emptier. They don't cry for you like a person who truly loves would. Their grief is strange, twisted, tangled with ego, confusion, and shame. It isn't just that they miss you. It's that they can't make sense of losing someone who made them feel significant, safe, complete. You were part of their identity. Your presence fed their pride and made them feel superior. Losing you isn't only emotional for them. It's a crisis of identity, because if someone as kind, loyal, and emotionally strong as you could finally walk away, then maybe they aren't as special or untouchable as they always believed. That's a truth they never wanted to face. As that realization creeps in, panic starts to take over. Their messages get longer, filled with excuses and half-apologies. They say things like, "I never meant to hurt you," or "You were the only one who truly understood me." But those words rarely come from real remorse. More often, they come from fear. Fear of losing control over how the story ends. Fear that the chapter they assumed was on pause has actually closed for good. The story they wrote with themselves as the hero has lost its most important character, and that character was you. They begin to see your worth not when you begged, not when you cried, but when you finally stopped trying. When you walked away without anger or scenes, just quiet, steady dignity. That's what shattered them, because your silence carried a message louder than any argument ever could. You had outgrown their chaos. You had found peace, and they can't follow you into that peace because they only know how to survive through conflict. Now they're surrounded by people who see only their charm, not their chaos. People who don't look deeper, don't challenge them, don't truly care. And suddenly they remember what it was like with you, how you saw their flaws but still cared. That kind of connection is rare, almost spiritual. It doesn't come twice in a lifetime. The realization hits them slowly, painfully, and completely. They didn't just lose a person, they lost something sacred, something they can't replace. Their ego can't shield them from the truth forever. This is when the collapse begins. For years, the narcissist has lived under the illusion that their superiority could protect them from any real emotional consequences. Their ego acted like armor, blocking them from guilt and accountability. It allowed them to feel right even when they were cruel. It told them they were victims even when they were the cause of the pain. It convinced them that emotions were tools to use, not responsibilities to carry. It whispered that people were replaceable, that apologies were optional, and that manipulation was just strategy. But that illusion can't last. Ego is fragile. It only holds together as long as the outside world agrees with their version of reality. Once people stop feeding them attention, once the admiration fades, once the person they believed they could always pull back finally disappears, the whole structure starts to crack. The validation dries up. The charm stops working and the truth begins to echo where their confidence used to be. The fallout isn't only around them, it's inside them. Guilt, something they once mocked as weakness, begins to surface in ways they don't understand. Sleep doesn't come easy anymore. Thoughts become restless, looping, and heavy. Their once inflated confidence now feels like an empty balloon. They look into the mirror, and for the first time in years, they don't recognize the person staring back. The image of power and perfection they worked so hard to maintain now looks distorted, fading at the edges. They start to remember things you said, truths you tried to tell them, boundaries you set. Those words once ignored or mocked now echo like thunder. The smirk that once dismissed your pain is gone, replaced by quiet confusion. They realize the world no longer believes their story. Their voice doesn't hold the same weight. The lies don't land the same way. What follows isn't just a change, It's a breakdown, because when ego fails, they're forced to face the one thing they've been running from all along, the emptiness inside, everything they once blamed you for, the insecurity, the shame, the fear, was really theirs. They just projected it onto others. Their ego wasn't just armor. It was a mask hiding the fragile, frightened parts they refused to acknowledge. And now, without anyone left to carry their pain, without someone to manipulate into feeling guilty for them, they're left alone with it. They may try to rebuild the illusion to win you back, to prove they can still control you. They may play the victim, hoping to gather sympathy from others, but it doesn't work anymore. Their old tricks sound rehearsed. Their stories sound hollow. The charm that once drew people in now feels forced. The grand confidence has turned into something brittle and transparent. People start noticing the cracks. The desperation beneath the performance becomes visible. Their stories no longer inspire admiration. They invite doubt, and deep inside, the narcissist feels something they can't name, vulnerability, but not the healthy kind that leads to growth, the raw, terrifying kind that comes when control slips through their fingers. Their entire sense of identity, built on dominance and self-importance, starts to fall apart. What's left beneath is someone they barely know, insecure, bitter, lost. Now the consequences they always avoided start to find them. The people they hurt, the bridges they burned, the relationships they poisoned, all come back in memory like ghosts that won't leave. They can't deny the pattern anymore. They can't pretend it was always someone else's fault. The ego, cornered and fragile, has nothing left to hide behind, and this is when the haunting begins, not from what others do to them, but from what they finally see within themselves. They start to understand that some things cannot be undone. Some words can't be unsaid. Some wounds won't ever heal, and the ones who truly cared, the ones who gave them chance after chance, don't come back. They begin to grasp the full weight of their choices. For years they believed consequences were for other people, but now the mirror tells a different story. When they finally dare to look, they don't see the powerful figure they imagined. They see the truth, the emptiness behind the mask, the damage they caused, the love they destroyed. They try to rebuild their fantasy to make the illusion believable again, but it's too late. Too many masks have fallen. Too many people have seen who they really are. Their charm no longer fools anyone, not even themselves. The words they once used to manipulate now sound empty, even to their own ears. The lies they told themselves for comfort don't work anymore. The reflection in the mirror isn't powerful or brilliant. It's lonely, scared, and painfully aware. What hurts them most isn't even the loss itself. It's the awareness that it was all preventable. You warned them. You gave them patience, compassion, and countless second chances. But they threw it away, thinking you'd always return. They believed the world revolved around their ego, but now they stand in silence, realizing that ego was never protection. It was a cage. Ego promises safety, control, and superiority. But the truth always breaks through, and when it does, it's never gentle. It's brutal. It's loud. It's undeniable. And that's when your silence becomes the final truth they can't escape. For so long, they thrived on noise. The arguments, the crying, the explanations, they fed on your emotions because they equated your reactions with power. Every time you tried to make them understand, they didn't hear pain. They heard proof that they still mattered to you. Every tear you shed reassured them that they still had control. But then everything changed. You stopped reacting. You stopped explaining. You didn't yell or beg. You didn't send long messages trying to fix what was never yours to fix. You simply went quiet, not the silence of defeat, but the silence of self-respect. That silence speaks in a language the narcissist cannot understand. It's not manipulation. It's not strategy. It's peace. It's acceptance. It's the realization that no amount of words can reach someone who doesn't want to listen. And that silence, that calm detachment becomes their undoing, because for the first time they feel powerless. Your silence removes their ability to twist your words, to draw you back into their storm. It denies them the one thing they crave most, control. They finally experience the emptiness they once made you feel. And in that silence, the narcissist begins to meet the one person they've avoided all their life, themselves.